But it regulated just about everything you can think of as regards the relationship between Muncher na Thuha, the people of the Thuah. And then regions had ordinary, larger kings. But the king patronized, or was the patron of the Brehon, just like he was of the musicians and the arts. It was his job to take care of them. But he was subject to their law as well. He did not make the laws, which is very interesting. No king. So therefore, when a new king came in, or there was a change in government, so to speak, the laws didn't change. And he didn't come in and change a whole bunch of laws. That's not how laws were changed.
So basically, the written laws kind of like had a little senate type?
No, well, they did have, they could, there was 9 people could, 9 elements of this society could come together and they could make a law real quick in an emergency. But generally speaking, and that was only when something, was needed to be, some innovation was needed. Maybe like dealing with a foreign threat, or dealing with something, or maybe a king that had misbehaved or something like that. Yes, they could, but generally that was a rarity. It would be as rare as the Pope calling the council of the churches. They don't do it very often. But yes, they did have a mechanism for making laws, but they did not have a judiciary or a legislature like we do. So we're not there making laws like that, because it didn't work that way. The laws were accepted; they were known, and and almost immutable, and didn't change. So you can see that the judiciary, so to speak, the Brehons, were far more powerful than even our Supreme Court today. But they weren't concentrated in 1 or 2 people; they were spread around through the Thuas, and they generally implemented the same set of laws. And we'll talk about the characteristics of it. It was the most fundamental aspect of ancient Irish life, Gaelic life, was respect for the law. And I noticed this today, which I like. When, as you know, the 1603 was a huge, the Flight of the Earls, and when James first came to power in England, that was a huge turning point. And one of the reasons why the Flight of the Earls was so important, I'll deal with that in a minute. But when they came over, well, I'll deal with it now. One of the reasons why the Flight of the Earls was so important, in many respects, was because when the chieftains left, the system collapsed, in that the Brehons lost their patrons. Incredibly powerful fact. They no longer had their protection, because the king and the old system sustained them. Now, all it was so devastating. But when when James first sent over his conquering legal army, so to speak, there's one thing that has survived here in Old English. I'll read it to you. For there is no nation of people under the sun that doth love, equal, and indifferent, that means impartial, justice better than the Irish. This is written in very Old English. Or will rest better satisfied with the execution thereof, although it be against themselves, so as they may have the protection and benefit of the law, when upon just cause they do desire it. So here was an Englishman marvelling at the reverence that the Irish people as a whole had for the law, even when it acted against them, because they still revered it so highly that they still couldn't imagine life without it. It was so important. Now that was a sort of a testament to the fact that how deep the idea of adherence to, and it's not sort of subject to, but absolute adherence to it in the deepest possible sense as part of their very being, which was foreign to the English mind because everything was imposed. And by the way, what absolutely destroyed that and was unbelievably destructive to the Irish culture as a whole was the penal laws, because the Irish couldn't imagine a situation where laws would be unjust. It just didn't. It was beyond their compensation. Law was justice. It was like higher than God, because it was the Shanachas Mór. It was the great knowledge, the great thing that was passed down from olden times. And here you had this incredible penal system, which the law was designed to punish, to hurt you, and it actually it so demoralized the Irish in so many ways that they didn't know what to do. So they were absolutely utterly completely at sea in morally, spiritually, and culturally, because their entire culture was taken away from one another. But you can see then how deep the concept of total, and it's not subservience, but total adherence, total respect for the law, because it was what protected your rights as against the next person. Now, as O'Curry and O'Donovan did their work and unveiled a lot of what MacFurbisher had written. See, MacFurbisher had written in Middle Irish, and he'd interpreted Old Irish. So O'Curry and O'Donovan were able to read MacFurbisher, who had essentially translated from Old Irish. But MacFurbisher was only able to do so much. So that what has survived, because see, what the English did was they scooped up a lot of the stuff and just brought it over and put it into their mausoleums in England. And again, I think I told you the story about how at the time of Edmund Burke discovered this great volumes of this. In fact, everything that's in the Trinity College in Dublin Library all came out of some of the old stately homes in England. And he was one of the great weekend visitors, if you like. His calendar would have been full a year in advance, where he would be the guest of the nobility within perhaps a day's coach ride out of London, rather. And he was staying with, who knows, the Earl or something of Northamptonshire or whatever. And they were walking in the garden, and the Earl or Lord, I've forgotten, is Conor Cruise O'Brien, actually, in his book, the great symphony, great symphony. Anyway, his book on Edmund Burke says how he says, "Oh, Burke, I wonder if you'd mind taking a look at some of this gibberish that we have up in the loft over the stables. I think it's Egyptian, but some foreign old, whatever, that somebody, my ancestors, had brought in from some foreign place. They were quite sure that it was actually Oriental. Certainly, I'll take a look at it." So, because he was a great scholar. So he goes up, looks at it, and he literally went cold because he recognized it as Middle Irish and Early Irish. But he daren't have said so because they'd have burned it on the spot. So he said, "Yes, well, it looks like it might be Sanskrit or some Middle Eastern stuff. But yeah, it may not be worth it. But on the other hand, it may be." Now, he had come from Trinity. He says, "I'll tell you what, I'll have a friend of mine come over and maybe he can take it back and they'll study it." And that's how the damn thing got back to Trinity College. I mean, it's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Now, of course, the Bodleian Library, as you know, is probably one of the greatest repositories of ancient works anywhere, because they scooped it from all the various countries, and of course the British Museum. Well, anyway, so there is a vast amount of work in the English archives that nobody has ever looked at yet. So hopefully, as I was saying earlier.